Syrian refugees are citizens and permanent residents of Syria who have fled the country since the onset of the Syrian Civil War in 2011. As of February 2016, the United Nations has identified 13.5 million Syrians requiring humanitarian assistance, of which 6.6 million are internally displaced within Syria, and over 4.8 million are refugees outside of Syria. Turkey is the largest host country with over 2.7 million Syrian refugees. Assistance to internally displaced persons within Syria and Syrian refugees in neighbouring countries is coordinated largely through the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Close to 1 million Syrians have requested asylum in various countries, particularly Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and the European Union. To February 2016, pledges have been made to the UNHCR by various nations to permanently resettle 170,000 registered refugees. History: 2011 – The Arab Spring uprisings in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Bahrain and Yemen inspired protests in Syria, followed by Syrian army intervention. As Syria descends into a civil war, it becomes quickly divided into a complex patchwork of shifting alliances and territories between the Assad government, rebel groups, ethnic groups, and Islamic extremists. By May it is estimated that no more than 300 Syrian refugees cross into Turkey. Turkey sets up a small camp for these refugees and reports it is preparing for a worst-case scenario should refugee numbers increase. By mid-May, about 700 refugees from Tel Kazak flee into Lebanon, and the village of Wadi Khalid in northern Lebanon receives another 1,350. More are expected. With the siege of Jisr al-Shafaa, the situation on the Turkish-Syrian border deteriorates and thousands flee in anticipation of a Syrian army attack. Initially it is reported that about 2,500 Syrians cross the border, but refugees housed in Turkish camps exceed 10,000 by mid-June, and was estimated at 8,500 in Lebanon, where the total refugee population was estimated at over 20,000. His Syrian troops amassed at the Turkish border. The flow increased to hundreds of refugees a day by the 23rd of June, reaching a total of 11,700 refugees. By early July, over 15,000 Syrians sought refuge in Turkey. More than 5,000 returned to Syria, leaving around 10,227 Syrian refugees in Turkey. Registered refugees in Lebanon reached 2,600 by the end of August, with thousands more residing in Lebanon illegally. According to Al Arabiya, some 2,500 Syrians resided in the Wadi Khalid area, down from 5,500 in May. Most of Syrian refugees in the area were Arabs and Bedouins. A humanitarian aid campaign was launched by Bait al-Mal. Despite the repatriation of many Syrians between July and August, in early September Turkey began setting up 6 refugee camps. Some 6,000 out of initial 15,000 remained in Turkey. By November the number of refugees in Turkey stood at 7,600 and had reached almost 5,000 in Lebanon. By mid-December, the number of refugees in Jordan was around 1,500 registered and possibly thousands more unregistered. By the end of 2011, it was reported that thousands of refugees had found shelter in Libya. Early in the year, Lebanon reports 5,000 refugees and Turkey 9,700. Israeli announces preparations to accommodate Alawite Syrian refugees in the occupied Golan Heights, should the Syrian government collapse. Jordan opens a camp for 3,000 refugees. By March, fighting in Homs and along the Lebanese border forced 2,000 Syrians to flee into Lebanon, and Turkey reports hundreds of arrivals daily. UN-registered refugees in Turkey's Hatay province reached 13,500, with thousands more elsewhere. Turkish officials anticipate as many as 50,000 new arrivals and begin constructing camps in Hatay, Kilis, Gaziantep and Sanliurfa. Jordan reports as many as 80,000 arrivals and has enrolled 5,000 Syrian students in state schools. Refugees in the Kurdish region of Iraq reach 1,000 and are offered shelter and medical care in Damit's camp. Ethnic Kurdish refugees are offered military training to protect Kurdish-majority territories in Syria. The April offensive by the Syrian army, preceding the April 10 ceasefire under the Kofi Annan peace plan, coincides with a peak flow of refugees to Turkey. Over 5,000 arrive on 4 to 5 April, bringing the total in Turkey to 25,000. Turkey demands Syrians abide by the ceasefire, and more support from the international community. Jordan has upwards of 130,000 refugees by some estimates. 200,000 or more Syrians are internally displaced. By May, 3,171 ethnic Kurds are registered with the UNHCR in Iraqi Kurdistan, and 50 to 70 people arrive daily. In May, it is reported that Syrian refugees are being given political asylum and successfully integrated into Colombian society. By June, refugees in Jordan, concentrated in the northern cities of Mafraq, Irbid, Ramtha, Jerash and Ajlan, reportedly stretch national water resources. In Lebanon, UNHCR-registered refugees reached 17,000, with another 26,000 settled elsewhere. Most refugees are reported to be women and children. Turkey reports 24,500 registered refugees. Over 2 days in July, 19,000 Syrians flee Damascus into Lebanon as violence inside the city escalates. The UNHCR reports 35,000 refugees in Jordan, but upward of 140,000 unregistered refugees are likely in the country. In the Iraqi Kurdish region, more than 8,000 are now registered. In July, refugee numbers in Lebanon increased to 28,100 and to 43,000 in Turkey. About 1,000 returned to Syria because of very poor conditions in provisional refugee camps. In August, the first Syrian refugees migrate by sea to the European Union, with 124 arriving in Italy. Displaced refugees relocate to less troubled parts of the country. Refugees fled in desperation to escape violence, chaos, and shortages of food, medicine, and other necessities. It became harder for people to find a safe place to settle because 3,000–6,000 refugees leave Syria every day and refugee centers fill to capacity. There is increasing concern about the exploitation of female refugees. Orthodox Christian refugees began to arrive in the United States. In August, there is a sharp increase in refugees entering Bulgaria. Bulgarian refugee centers are at capacity and the government seeks emergency accommodations and asks the EU and Red Cross for aid. At this time, the UN confirms that many thousands of refugees flee to Iraqi Kurdistan. The UNHCR estimates that more than 4,600 refugees arrive in Italy by sea this year, two-thirds of whom arrive in August. In September, Sweden becomes the first EU country to grant permanent residency to all asylum seekers, and the right to family reunification, in light of worsening conditions in Syria. Roughly 8,000 Syrian refugees in Sweden are affected by the ruling. The decision is welcomed, but some warn that it may be a boon for people smuggling operations. In September, countries in South America offer refuge to Syrians. More than 300 refugee families have already arrived in Argentina. Brazil is the first country in the Americas to offer humanitarian visas to refugees. Brazil's embassies in countries neighboring Syria issue travel visas and allow for claims on arrival in Brazil. An estimated 1.5 million Syrians are refugees by year-end. The deteriorating humanitarian situation in neighboring Iraq prompts an influx of Iraqi refugees into northeastern Syria. By the end of August 2014, the UN estimates 6.5 million people have been displaced within Syria, while more than 3 million had fled to countries such as Lebanon, Jordan and Turkey. The Syria crisis has become the biggest humanitarian emergency of our era, yet the world is failing to meet the needs of refugees and the countries hosting them. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres says at the time, largely due to the Syrian Civil War, the UNHCR reports that the total number of refugees worldwide exceeds 50 million, for the first time since World War II. Tensions rise in Lebanon when the army raids refugee sites in Arsal and 3 persons are shot. The Muslim Scholars Committee condemns what it calls human rights abuses, saying the collective punishment of Syrian refugees cannot be justified, and calling for a transparent and impartial investigation of the violations, from the burning of camps to the torturing of detainees in Arsal. 1 million refugees are registered by the UNHCR, most of whom are fleeing instability in northeastern Syria caused by ISIS. Jordan receives comparatively fewer refugees this year, due to the relative stability in southern Syria. In October 2014, Uruguay starts receiving refugees. Large numbers of refugees cross into the EU, and by August there are 313,000 asylum applications across Europe. The largest numbers are recorded in Germany with over 89,000, and Sweden with over 62,000. More than 100,000 refugees cross into the EU in July, and by September over 8,000 refugees cross daily. Syrians form the largest group of refugees to Europe. The UNHCR reports that refugee numbers exceed 4 million, mostly in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan and Iraq. The response of Saudi Arabia and other Muslim countries to the refugee crises come under intense media scrutiny. Claims are made that these countries are not accepting Syrian refugees, while other media outlets report that these countries provide visa extensions and family reunification for Syrians unable to return home. Saudi officials claim the kingdom has given residency to between 100,000 and 2.5 million Syrians, though these numbers are widely disputed. Under the Dublin regulation, an asylum applicant in one EU country must be returned to that country should they attempt onward migration to another EU country. Hungary is overburdened in 2015 by asylum applications during the European migrant crises, to the point that on the 23rd of June it refuses to allow further applicants to be returned by other EU countries. Germany and the Czech Republic suspend the Dublin regulation for Syrians and start to process their asylum applications directly. On the 21st of September, EU Home Affairs and Interior Ministers approve a plan to accept and redistribute 120,000 asylum seekers across the EU. The Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania and Slovakia opposed the plan, and Finland abstains. Poorer countries express concerns about the economic and social cost of absorbing large numbers of refugees. Wealthier countries embrace ethnic diversity and are able to offer more humanitarian assistance. On the 3rd of September 2015, Alan Kurdi, his brother Garlab Kurdi and the mother drowned as the family attempts to migrate by sea into Europe. The image of Alan Kurdi's body washed up on a Turkish beach becomes a seminal moment in the refugee crises and global response. National debates and media coverage about the Syrian refugee crises increase markedly, bringing considerable attention to the human costs of the Syrian Civil War, the responsibilities of host countries, pressures forcing refugees to migrate from the host countries, people smuggling, and the responsibilities of third countries to resettle refugees. In October, the UN's human rights chief claims the Czech Republic is holding migrants in degrading and jail-like conditions. Also in September, German customs seized packages of fake Syrian passports which police suspect are being sold to non-Syrians seeking asylum in Germany. By the 21st of December, an estimated 500,000 Syrian refugees have entered Europe. 80% arrived by sea, and most land in Greece. A factory producing fake life jackets made for migrants wanting to cross the Aegean Sea to Greece is discovered in Turkey. Police seize more than 1,200 fake life jackets in the factory at Izmir and arrest 4 workers, including 2 young Syrian girls. The raid came in the same week that the bodies of more than 30 people wash up on Turkish beaches, having drowned in their attempt to reach Greece. After the agreement of a multi-billion-euro deal between the EU and Turkey, Turkish police slightly increased their operations against people involved in the wider smuggling business. On the 19th of February 2016, Austria imposes restrictions on the number of refugee entries. Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia and the Republic of Macedonia announced that just 580 refugees a day will be allowed through the borders. As a result, large numbers of Syrian refugees are stuck in Greece. There are fears that Greece won't be able to cope with the thousands stranded in the reception centers scattered across the mainland and the islands of Lesbos, Kos and Chios. According to Amnesty International, Turkish guards routinely shoot at Syrian refugees stranded at the border. Also, Turkey has forcibly returned thousands of Syrian refugees to war zones since mid-January 2016. On May 10, 2016, Human Rights Watch said Turkish border guards were shooting and beating Syrian refugees trying to reach Turkey, resulting in deaths and serious injuries. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan denied it. On May 18, 2016, lawmakers from the European Parliament's Subcommittee on Human Rights have said that Turkey should not use Syrian refugees as a bribe for the process of visa liberalization for Turkish citizens inside the European Union. On June 3, 2016, a Turkish cleaner working at the Nizip camp in Gaziantep, Turkey, was sentenced to 108 years of prison for sexually abusing Syrian boys. He did not deny the charges but said many employees and managers in the camps were involved. He also admitted that he paid the children 2 to 5 Turkish lira before assaulting them in the toilets with assaulted boys aged between 8 and 12. On June 18, 2016, UN Chief Ban Ki-moon has praised Greece for showing remarkable solidarity and compassion towards refugees, and he also called for international support. At the night of June 18, 2016, according to Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and National Coalition of Syrian Revolution and Opposition Forces, Turkish security forces kill Syrians refugees who attempted to cross the border into Turkey. The Turkish Foreign Ministry denied the claims. After the 2016 Turkish coup d'etat attempt, Greek authorities on a number of Aegean islands have called for emergency measures to curtail a growing flow of refugees from Turkey. The number of migrants and refugees willing to make the journey across the Aegean has increased noticeably. At Athens, officials voiced worries that Turkish monitors over seeing the deal in Greece had been abruptly pulled out after the failed coup, with little sign of them being replaced. Also, the mayor of Kos expressed concern in a letter to the Greek Prime Minister, citing the growing influx of refugees and migrants after the failed coup. The Association of Greek Tourism Enterprises warned about the prospect of another flare-up in the refugee-migrant crisis due to the Turkish political instability. International response. Financial aid figures above are donations to international organizations as compiled by the Financial Tracking Service of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Not included are government spending on domestic hosting and resettlement. Private donations are from individuals and organizations. United Nations donations are from unearmarked funds not attributable to specific member states. Figures for Turkey include expenditures not tracked by the FDS, aid delivery, financial aid from government, non-government, and private donors to support Syrian refugees is largely channeled through established aid organizations and national government agencies. These organizations and agencies deliver aid directly to refugees in the form of food, education, housing, clothing and medical care, along with migration and resettlement services. Complete figures for aid delivery since 2011 are not available. The table below shows cumulative known aid delivered by the largest aid organizations. Between April 2011 and December 2015, host countries. The UNHCR has a policy of helping refugees work and be productive, using their existing skills to meet their own needs and needs of the host country, ensure the right of refugees to access work and other livelihood opportunities as they are available for nationals. Match program interventions with corresponding levels of livelihood capacity and needs identified in the refugee population, and the demands of the market. Assist refugees in becoming self-reliant. Cash, food, rental assistance delivered through humanitarian agencies should be short-term and conditional and gradually lead to self-reliance. Activities as part of longer-term development. Convene internal and external stakeholders around the results of livelihood assessments to jointly identify livelihood support opportunities. Turkey. As of February 2016, Turkey hosts 2,688,686 registered refugees. About 30% live in 22 government-run camps near the Syrian border. Turkey is home to the highest number of Syrian refugees and has provided over $8 billion in aid. Financial aid from other countries has been limited, though €3.2 billion was promised by the EU in November 2015. Lebanon. As of March 31, 2016, Lebanon hosted 1,048,275 registered refugees from Syria, 53% of them children. The Lebanese government chose not to establish camps for people fleeing the civil war in Lebanon, and thus they have settled throughout the country, while most of them rent their accommodations in around 1,700 locations countrywide. Nearly a fifth live in non-formal settlements, mostly concentrated in border governorates, because the government of Lebanon has increasingly made it difficult for refugees from Syria to renew the residency permits. The number of households in which all members are legally in the country has dropped from 58% in 2014 to 29% in 2015. Refugee households living below the poverty line increased from 49% in 2014 to 70% in 2015. Families survive by borrowing money whenever they can. The percentage of refugee households with debt jumped from 70% in 2013 to 89% in 2015. Despite the struggling status, the Lebanese Forces Party, the Qatar Arab Party and the Free Patriotic Movement fear the country's sectarian-based political system is being undermined. Jordan. As of June 2015, there were 628,427 registered Syrian refugees in Jordan. However, a Jordanian census performed in November 2015 showed that there are 1.4 million Syrian refugees residing in the country, meaning that more than 50% of Syrian refugees in Jordan are unregistered. A report done by the World Bank in 2016 revealed that the Syrian refugee influx to Jordan has cost the kingdom more than $2.5 billion a year, which amounts to about 6% of Jordan's GDP and about a quarter of the government's annual revenues. Promised international aid has fallen several hundreds of millions of dollars short of the total cost. This has caused the kingdom's public debt to swell to 90% of its GDP in 2016 and has severely crippled the growth of its economy. The majority of the refugees in Jordan live in the local communities rather than refugee camps, which had added a large strain on the country's infrastructure, particularly towns in northern Jordan adjacent to the Syrian border. Iraq. As of February 2016, Iraq hosts 245,543 refugees. Several refugee camps exist in northern Iraq. Kurdish regional government hosting mostly Syrians of ethnic Kurdish origins. Egypt. As of April 2015, Egypt hosts 118,512 refugees. Armenia hosts 17,000 refugees, primarily ethnic Armenians, and about 13,000 displaced persons have entered the country. In addition, another 38 Armenian families resettled in the de facto independent Nagorno-Karabakh Republic as of 2013. 3 Kurdish Yazidi families have also found refuge in Armenia. Armenia is home to a Kurdish Yazidi community, currently numbering 35,000. Onward migration and resettlement. Bibliography. Seal P. What is really happening in Syria? The Washington Report on Middle East Affairs. 31, 1718.